What's up, YouTube? Laura Whitmore here, founder of Strategic Test Prep. Congrats on being done with the October test. I'm so happy for you guys. Hopefully you can go enjoy the rest of your weekend. My tutor Luis took the test today. He is en route. Hopefully he can make it while we're still filming this video. But I have a special video anyways because I've gotten some student feedback already that I wanted to share with you guys. And I also want to go to the chat. I see lots of people in the chat today. So I would love to hear about your experience and take your questions. So we're going to call this a tutor reaction video / student reaction video because what you guys saw of the test is just as important, if not more important. Before we get started, I want to let you guys all know that right now we are giving away our English workbook for free. So if you felt like the English modules were really, really difficult today, head to our website, strategictestprep.com, and subscribe to our email list. We'll send you a copy of the workbook. It's jam-packed with strategies to help you tackle even the toughest questions, lots of practice problems and exercises. So definitely go grab that and then sign up for another test, maybe like December, to give yourself a little bit more time to work on your weaknesses. All right, so I got an email from a student today and I just wanted to share it with you guys. He still has some work to do. We're gonna take another test, so he's not done with his prepping yet. But here's what he said about the test, and I'm wondering if you guys agree. He said, English, Module 1 felt very easy, but Module 2 was much more difficult. And I want to just emphasize that because I'm looking at comments on my YouTube channel and on Instagram and on TikTok, and it seems like a lot of people are saying that Module 2 English was really, really hard. So I'm wondering if that's the case. If you guys in the chat want to, maybe validate that for me, let me know what you thought specifically about English Module 2. And I'm wondering what specifically about English Module 2 was really hard. Like, was it the reading passages? Was it the logically completes the text? Was it like super tricky grammar? So if you're in the chat right now, let me know more specifically what you're thinking. I've got someone, Daryl, who said, yeah, English 2 was hard, a lot of dense passages. Oh my gosh. This is why I say to save the passages for last, you guys. I mean, especially like numbers 11 through 15, I just skip over those because they are super dense. And the science ones, they feel like so dense with information sometimes that when I start reading, I can't keep track of everything. So that's when I go to my scrap paper and I start annotating. So if you're on a science passage and maybe they're comparing like 2 different types of isotopes and you're having a hard time following, put one isotope on one side of a T-chart, put the other isotope on the other, and then start bulleting notes for each thing so that you can compare the 2 more easily. San Yoon said there was dense passages, but grammar was also weird. I'm wondering how grammar was weird. Are they maybe taking the grammar rules and then like flipping them on their head, because they do like to throw curveballs? So like one strategy I usually say is if you see a semicolon in the text, pick the semicolon because they might be separating items in a list. But maybe they give you an answer choice where the semicolons were both in the answer choice and you had to recognize those were separating items in the list. Daryl says grammar was easy. Rohan says grammar wasn't too bad. Well, that's good. I want to know what you guys think about the vocab today. I'm always curious. I feel like every test is a little bit different. Like, I took the November test last year. I felt like the vocab was straightforward on that test. And I feel like the vocab or the words in context can make or break. Oh, good. Okay. A lot of you are saying vocab was light, vocab was pretty easy, vocab was pretty good. That's awesome. That's good news. Seriously. So let me tell you guys more about what my student said. So then he said math. He said Module 1 was also easy, while Module 2 was quite difficult. I mean, guys, I kind of expect this, right? Like we expect Module 2 to be a lot harder. But what was your take on the math? Was the math also a hard Module 2? And, could you use Desmos a bunch? Were there any concepts that showed up that you haven't seen before? Here was a weird one. So I got a message on Instagram, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but all I'll say is they said that there was some geometry problem. I think it was with like a cylinder, and it was talking about the wall thickness. I've never seen that before. So that was a shock to me to hear that. And I'm wondering what the deal was. Maybe like the inside of the cylinder was empty, and then they gave you the volume of the cylinder, and then you had to find like the difference or something. That's kind of interesting to me. Muhammad said Desmos was of great help. That's really good. I did hear from a student on Instagram that my first prediction came true, which is amazing. So you could use the lists in Desmos, and I love that feature of Desmos. It makes solving those percent problems so much easier. That was really cool. Okay, here's what else my student said. He said, one thing I noticed across both subjects is that a lot of questions were repeated from the question bank. That was amazing for me to hear, because I've been giving my students all of those new question bank questions that were released in August. And so far, so good. It just sounds like the concepts that they released in those question bank questions are showing up on the test. So I cannot stress to you guys enough, you got to go through those new question bank questions. Like, they are key. I had like a friend call me. He took the last test. You guys might know him. He has a YouTube channel too. And, you know, he was talking about some of the concepts that showed up. And literally I was like, I've seen all of that in the new question bank questions. So you really want to make sure that you know how to do those. Sarah said she skipped 3 questions in Module 2 math. I am cooked. Or am I cooked? You might not be cooked. It depends on what your goal score is, right? So if you're trying to get like a high 1500 or a perfect score, you do need to try to get all the questions right. Like, you can only afford to miss one question. But if you're aiming for maybe just a 1500 or a high 1400 and you don't get to 3 questions, you could still get it, no problem. So it just depends on what your goal is. The challenge is there's a lot less questions on this test. So because there's a lot less questions on this test, you have to be meticulous and you've got to be super accurate. It's not like the paper test where you could miss a few and still get like a super high score. Okay, let me see if there was anything else. So what was interesting too was the student, I had him take practice test 7 from Bluebook before he went into this test, because I said, practice test 7 from Bluebook is the most recent test that has been released. It was released with 8, 9, and 10, but tests 8, 9, and 10 have old material on it from tests 1, 2, and 3 that they phased out. So test 7 is the only true test in Bluebook right now that's all new questions. So I had him take that one before the test, and he said he saw some repeats on the actual test to Bluebook test 7. So that would be another recommendation that I have for you guys. If you're prepping for like the November test, make sure to practice Bluebook test 7, because it has a lot of relevant information that you need to know right now. Okay, so let me see what else we had. So I did have someone say my predictions were 100% accurate. Thank you. That's awesome. I hope you guys watched my predictions video. I had someone say English Module 2 was disastrous. I'm so sorry to hear that. So what else do you guys think in the chat? Like, let's hear some of your take on this. So I've got Doctor asked a question. What if I lose 4 questions in Module 2? Okay, that's a good question. Here's what you can do. And let me actually show you guys this. This is a cool tool. So let me share my screen with you. Okay, just a second. Hang on, guys. I'm going to pull this thing up, okay? So, because a lot of people don't know about this. So if you want to estimate your score, this is what you do. Go to Google and Google Digital SAT Score Calculator. Okay, Albert IO, which has a lot of AP courses, they came out with a digital SAT score calculator to help you estimate your score. It's not going to be exact, but it's pretty cool and it gives you a good idea of what you would score. So let's say you got perfect on module 1, English, and you think you missed 3 questions on module 2. You would get a 750 roughly. So you can go to Albert IO, the digital SAT score calculator, plug in your numbers of what you think you got right, and then it will spit out a score for you. So let's say you got 1 question wrong on math module 1, and maybe you think you got 4 wrong on math module 2. That would give you a 720. So in this scenario, this student would have about a 1470. Okay. So just, keep that in mind. I use that with my students sometimes, like if they take a practice test, maybe it's just like a PDF test or something, then we'll go to the score calculator, we'll estimate the score. Shrestha said, is the October SAT curved high? Honestly, Shrestha, it's going to depend on how difficult this test was. From what I'm hearing from students right now, it sounds like both module 2 math and module 2 English were super tough. If that's the case, the curve should be a little bit more generous for you. So sometimes, like for instance, the March test this past year was really challenging. So the curve was a little bit more generous. So if you go to Albert IO's score calculator and you get your estimate, you might want to add 10 points to each one if it was a really, really tough test. Okay, we've got Mocha Latte. Oh, I like that name. Can they not be easier with our scores since it's so hard? That's unfair. Well, the thing about the test is it's going to feel harder because of the adaptive nature of it. They need to have a few really, really tough questions in there to separate the top 1% scores from the rest. Because if you think about it, your scores are on like a standard deviation bell curve. So they're trying to get most of your scores to that middle, like 68%, and then smooth it out so that you have to be an outlier to get like a 1550, right? So, I think a lot of students come to my channel or come to us and they're like, I want a 1550. And the reality is we're so good at this. We do help a lot of students get in the 1500s. We have like tried methods. We have amazing strategies. Every test we crush it and we help 8 to 10, sometimes more students get in the 1500s. But you have to remember that only 1% of students do that. So if you're in a room with 100 students, you're the only one that's going to do that. It's not that easy. Everybody thinks they can get a 1500. You really do have to work for it. Laura, what did you get wrong on December 2024 to get a 1590? Jamarcus, that's a good question. Well, first off, just as a correction, it was November, not December. And by the way, I'm going to take the November again this year. I'm going to do a test a year at least. So I'm super excited. So guys, stick around for that video because I'm going to really break it down since I'm going to see the test. But Jamarcus, here's the sad thing for me. This is why I think I got a 1590. On module 1 English, there was a words and context question where I swear 2 of the words could have been right. The words were all simple. I knew them all, but like based on what the sentence was saying, I really felt like either word could go in the blank. So I was like in pain over this question going back and forth, back and forth. And then when I got my score back and I saw the 1590, I'll admit I was a little crushed. I wanted a perfect score, but I think it was that silly words and context question from module 1. So it was heartbreaking, but it is what it is. I'm going to try again. But hey, that's kind of the way it goes. Like, I almost feel like if you're like a 1570 score or higher, it kind of comes down to luck and if the stars align, But here's the thing too, that you guys need to keep in mind. If you land like 1550 plus, at that point, they're not going to compare your scores. Like if you have a 1550 and another student has a 1580 and you're both applying to Princeton, Princeton isn't going to say, oh, the 1580 is better than the 1550, because that's splitting hairs. So if you're trying to go to an Ivy League school, the threshold really is a 1550. That's what they all want. That's what I keep hearing. That's what they're asking for. Once you hit that, you're done. Like, I have students calling me and they're like, Laura, I have a 1550 and I need you to tutor me. And I kind of laugh, you know, I'm like, no, you don't. I'm like, submit your score. You don't need to do this anymore. But sometimes people think they need to be like 1580, 1590. Once you hit 1550 and you're trying to go Ivy, you're good. And not everybody is trying to go Ivy. So listen, if you're not trying to go Ivy, I'm not saying you need a 1550. Everybody's goals are different. So don't feel like I'm saying that, you know, if you don't have a 1550, then your score isn't good. What you need to do is, based on the schools you're applying to, you got to Google them and just see what their median SAT score is. So let me just show you guys that, like, because I was working with a student who she wants to go to Miami, right? Miami's hot right now because there was that influencer that went to Miami that made it big, I think, on Insta. So what we did was we just searched median SAT score, University of Miami. And what you want to do once you see what their median score is, see how it says between 1340 and 1450? You want to get in that range. So if you score at least a 1340 on the test, you're going to submit your score. Okay, that's how that's going to work. If you're not at the median and you're under it, don't submit your score. Now, Miami, unfortunately, this is kind of irrelevant. They require scores. Miami requires scores. Ohio requires scores. A bunch of the Ivies require scores. So you have to, Georgetown requires scores. You have to also Google what their test taking requirements are, okay? Because some say test optional, some are test required. So for Miami, she's got to submit no matter what to even be considered. But if it is a test optional school, then look at that median range. And if you're not in that median range, don't submit it. If you're above the median range, amazing. You're going to be like a super strong candidate. So just keep that in mind. The thing that's most tragic, it's students who are in the median range that don't submit. That's called Miss-Withholding. If you don't submit a score and you're in the median range, you're losing out on scholarship money. You're losing out on them seeing your academic potential. So please make sure you guys submit your scores if you're in that median range. Okay, where did I go to uni? Post says, I went to Notre Dame. So actually, there's a Notre Dame football game on right now. And right after this video, I'm going to go back home and watch that with my dad and my son. We're having kind of a rough year. We're only 2-2 right now, which is kind of sad. But yeah, that's where I went. 1 in a million says, should I retake a 1540 for an Ivy? Honestly, 1 in a million, it comes down to, like, it's a holistic application. Are your essays strong? Are your extracurriculars strong? You know, like, are you like a student that you can like sell yourself to the school? Because if you have a really strong overall application, yeah, go Irish, Mighty Quinn. I love it. If you have a really strong application, then you don't need to retake a 1540. So to give you guys some more insight, I got inside information that an admissions officer to NYU, someone overheard them on the phone saying to somebody else, if the student has less than a 1500, we're not going to consider it. So then this person that I know followed up with them because they know the admissions officer, and they said, hey, so-and-so, what if my student has a 1490? And the admissions officer said, no, we'll still consider it if it's a 1490. So if you're just 10 points less than a 1550, don't stress it. If your application's strong, I wouldn't go through trying to get a higher score. Just submit it at that point. Will you be doing an SAT predictions video for the school SAT that's going to be this month? Not Rosie, I can't do predictions videos for the school SATs because they all vary with their dates. So it's really hard to drill down because some schools will do it one, Wednesday, other schools will do it another Wednesday. So I can't do like a school day predictions, but what I would recommend is watch my predictions videos for the August test, the September test, and the October test. because now we're in a 2025-2026 school year. And those predictions I made for August, September, and October will apply to your October school day test. So watch those 3 videos. Sinai said, do you submit SATs if in bottom 25% of college stats? Sinai, if it's test optional, withhold. Don't submit your scores if you're in the bottom 25%. If they're test required, you do have to submit. You don't really have a choice. So, you know, you just have to hope that the rest of your application is super strong, because the SAT is just one portion of it. Shrestha, what is your dream school? You know, let me know, because that's interesting that their median range isn't available. It should be. Boole says, do all schools take Superscores? Boole, most schools do. The notable school that does not is Georgetown University. So let's say you want to be a poli-sci major and Georgetown's your top choice. That's a tricky school because they require you to send all your scores in. But if Georgetown isn't on your radar, don't worry about it. Most schools will take a Superscore. You can always just Google each school to check, but most do. And if you think about it, it's because it helps them in their statistics, because all these schools are vying for the top spots on the US World News Report rankings. So if their median SAT score is higher, they rank higher on the list. So they want your Superscore because your Superscore makes them look better. So that's why, you know, UNC Chapel Hill. Oh, okay. Let's check that out real quick. So let me share my screen. Let's see if we can find it. Okay. Median score for UNC Chapel Hill. It's not available. They have a test optional admissions policy. Oh, that's so interesting. Okay. Check this out though. College Board has something on them. It says the acceptance rate is about 19% and the SAT range is like a 1360 to a 1520. So College Board's data is good. College Board collects a lot of data. Look at Prep Scholar says it's a 1424. So if the range is 1360 to 1520 and the Prep Scholar says the average is a 1424, I would try to get in the 1400s if you're going to apply to UNC. I think it's harder if you're out of state to get into UNC than if you're in state too. So you want to be a stronger applicant if you're out of state. But that's an awesome school. I'm a Michael Jordan fan. I love the Tar Heels. I want that for you. That would be amazing. What do you mean, what about for PSAT, Prod Shadow? Like, tell me more, and then I can answer your question. Okay, Franklin. Hi, Alberto. Happy birthday, Alberto. Have a good day. Oh, man, he had to take the SAT on his birthday. That's so rough. I hope it went well for him. Mighty Quinn, I like you. We should be friends. That's awesome. You're right. Notre Dame is way better. Okay, let's see what else we have. We have more questions. Do you have to submit all your SAT scores if you Superscore? This is from CYT Lynn. No, you don't. So what you're going to do is you're just going to submit the 2 scores that have the highest math and English. That's it. They don't need to know about the rest of the tests you take. So you could take 8 tests and then just pick the 2 that have the highest scores and just send those. They won't know about the other 6, which is pretty cool. Unless it's Georgetown, they want to see all of them. So if I work with a student whose top choice is Georgetown, we work together for a few months and I make sure they're fully prepped before they take a test. We don't do any practice tests. I don't have them go in prematurely just to see what it's like. They have to be ready for the test before I let them go in there. What else do we have? I'm taking it. Okay, Prod Shadow followed up about PSAT. I'm taking it next week. Should I use it as a guideline for studying for the SAT? Absolutely. The PSAT is just like the SAT. So sometimes I'll start working with a sophomore or a junior and we'll prep for both at the same time so that they can try to get national merit. So this is for juniors, national merit on the PSAT and then take an SAT after. The only difference between the PSAT and the SAT, there's 2 things. The PSAT is scored out of 1520. So the highest you can get on the English and the math is a 760, not an 800. And it's missing 20% of the math concepts. So some of that Advanced math, algebra 2 stuff that you learn in your algebra 2 course, that's not on the PSAT. Okay, let's see. What else do we have? How concerned, this is Ghost. Wait, I'm missing you. Let me go back. How concerned should I be with my score as a Navy veteran of 9 years? I don't think my score is going to be very good. Well, first of all, thank you for your service. I've had military veterans call me to work with us. I actually had a couple military veterans recently take our self-paced courses, and they help them a lot. And I think it depends on the school, because some schools, they really like value that. Like you'll bring something different to the table in the student body. You have like an amazing life experience. You're going to have interesting perspectives to really like enhance the classes that you're participating in. So if you have a lower SAT score, you just have to keep in mind there's other things about your application that are really strong. It's going to come down to what the school needs to shape their class, and they might value you regardless. But if your score isn't very good, check the median score range, and if they're test optional, just don't submit it. Okay, make sure you have stellar essays and other stuff, and you'll probably have a good shot of getting in as a veteran, which is cool. All right, what else do we have? How would the school test date look like? Oh, well, the school SAT, Vime, it's actually kind of cool because you take it in your school, you take it like on a Wednesday, and you take it at 10 in the morning. You take it for free, you don't have to pay for it, but not every school offers it. But what's interesting is they released data and found that students score higher on school day SATs than Saturday SATs. And I think that this is for a couple of reasons. It's a little bit later in the morning, so you're a little bit more cognitively awake, and you're taking it in your school, so it's familiar. Because sometimes when we have to go to a different school and we don't know the lay of the land, and then we're looking for the entrance and looking for the room, it's just a little bit more stressful. So school day SATs, if you can take it, it's to your benefit. I had students take an SAT class with us a couple years ago, and they scored 80 points higher on their school day SAT than on the Saturday SAT. So just something to keep in mind if it's offered to you. If it's not, that's okay. You can still do amazing on a Saturday test. You know what I mean? We've had students get 1580s, 1570s, 1560s on a Saturday test. So you'll be fine. Okay, what else do we have? You guys are asking great questions. I'm not sure what you mean, Con, when you say, could you please brief the College Board SAT scoring criteria? I'm not sure what you mean by that. No, super scores are seen just as good as normal scores, because again, it helps their data. So if you submit a super score, don't worry. They're not going to say, oh, it's just a super score. This is not as good as this other person that did it on one test. They'll look at your highest and that's it. They're not even going to consider the other part. Okay. Do colleges look at 1600 specifically as like stand out in some way? This is from the Miraculous Cat. I can't answer that for sure. I'm not an admissions officer and every program is different. But if you're going like Ivy and you have a 1550 or above, they're going to consider you the same as the 1600. They don't split hairs. So I don't think that you need to chase a perfect 1600 once you get up that high. Just, retire the jersey and work on your college essays and work on your applications. Ashton, that's a really good question. Do I know what National Merit's process is after qualifying with your PSAT score? Yeah, there's something about getting commended, right? So you get commended. And it depends on what state you live in. So some states require a higher score to be commended than others because some states are more competitive than others. So like I live in New York State, you have to get a lot higher score on the PSAT to be commended than say if you live in like Alabama. So, it's kind of tricky. You could Google like, whatever state you live in, what does it take to be commended for national merit? And then there's a process after that I'm not super familiar with because it's kind of behind the scenes stuff and I'm not a student anymore. So I haven't obviously been commended, I'm a tutor. But that's a really good question. I would just start by finding out what you need for your state. and go from there. Bengal said, should I remember words from Words in Context from College Board SAT practice test by heart and soul? I see words in context repeat. So we have a high probability list that we share with our students, and we basically say, hey, have a good handle on these words. For instance, the word tenuous showed up a few times. So I was going over it with my students this past week. I'm like, what does tenuous mean? They're like, weak. I'm like, good, know that. I don't know if tenuous came up on your test, but it is good to have a handle on words that have shown up before, because they have a higher likelihood of showing up again over a new word. Alan said, Laura, my son Aiden watches your prediction videos and they're very helpful. Since you got a 1590, now I'm inspired as a father to take the SAT too. Oh my gosh, that's awesome, Alan. You should follow up with me if you take it. Let me know how it went for you. You know, I feel like as an adult going into a test, it just gives me more compassion for all you students out there. I know exactly what you're going through. I make sure all my tutors take a test, because then we can relate to you on a different level, right? Like we can empathize with you instead of sympathize. And I think that the experience of going in and actually taking the test, it helps us firm up our strategies and give you the best tips ahead of your test, because we know what it's like to be under those time constraints and in those environmental conditions. So Alan, that's really cool. You're a super supportive dad. I think that would be great if you did that for sure. And Amber said, for Ivies, does test optional actually mean test preferred? Amber, that's a great question. Now, here's what I've known, okay? We've had lots of conferences about this. Data is released every year from admissions offices, and what we've seen in the data is that they do admit more students who submit a score than don't. And this is why, or this is partially why. To rank higher in the US World News Report, your incoming freshman class needs to have at least 50% of the student body that submitted a score. If more than half, or if less than half doesn't submit a score that they accept, then their SAT score doesn't count for points for them and they move down in the rankings. So they favor students who submit a score over students who don't, because it does help them move up in the rankings and earn more points. And honestly, the data has also shown that GPA coupled with an SAT score is the strongest predictor of college readiness. So during COVID, when the SAT went away, these Ivy League schools were only admitting students on GPA alone, and their dropout rates started to increase, because lots of kids across the United States have a 4.0. Grade inflation actually is real right now. And so what happened was they didn't know enough about the student academically, just looking at that 4.0 GPA. And so a lot of students ended up not being able to hang at their schools. So when they admit you, they don't want to take a gamble on you. They want to know you're going to succeed in their rigorous programs. They want to make sure you graduate, because graduation rates also contribute to the new US World News Report rankings. So if their attrition rates go up, meaning if they lose students and students drop out, it makes their program look bad. So yes, they still prioritize SAT scores, even if they say they're test optional. And that's something I think students and families need to be educated on more, because sometimes you go to a website and the way that they word the test optional policies, it's so misleading, because it really sounds like they don't care, but behind the scenes they do. So, but again, don't stress it. I mean, if you don't hit the median score and your application's really strong, they do admit students without a score. You just have a better shot if you submit a strong score. So I hope that helps answer your question. All right. Well, guys, you know what? Like I said, the Notre Dame game is on, and so I've got to run. But I have to tell you, just like this was a cool video for me. I was really glad to be here and hang out with all of you and answer your questions. I hope I helped, clear some things up for you guys. I hope that, whatever your testing experience was today, you can be proud of yourself for what you've done. And if you aren't happy with your result, you can always keep at it. or you have options. So like, I don't want you to think that this SAT score is like a make or break where, you know, if you don't get a good SAT score, it's going to ruin your life, because that's not the case. But just know that we're here. So, you know, sometimes like if students take their first test and then they get the results and they're not happy, you guys can come to us. Like, we would be happy to help you. And then we can take you further than, you know, maybe prepping on your own can. So there's lots of options. You know, on our website, you can see the different services we offer. We are taking new students right now because we're finishing up with a lot of seniors that are applying early action and early decision. So just go to strategictestprep.com, check out what we have to offer, book a consultation, and, you know, we would love to meet with you and talk about how we can help. All right, guys. All right, it's 6-0 Irish. I got to go home and go watch that game. Everybody, take it easy. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and thanks for hanging out with me. Bye, guys.